All right. Just so that we're doing pieces. All right. That way, people that aren't doing quiz corrections can kind of get a start, and then if you are, you'll have time to do that. We're just going to do a little piece today, and we're going to do a little piece tomorrow, and we'll put it all together on Wednesday when everybody. So, we're going to talk about shifts with sine and cosine functions. So all the stuff you know about graphing sine and cosine functions isn't going away. All right, all that stuff still exists. Okay? So, first thing, I can go through and I will go in order here for you on your note sheet. When you shift a sine or cosine function vertically, a new horizontal axis known as the midline becomes the reference line about which the graph oscillates. So if you think about all the graphs we've done so far, the middle has been the x-axis, right? They've all gone up and down around the x-axis. If we're going to start shifting them vertically, then we won't have the x-axis in the middle anymore. So we'll have the midline in the middle. Okay? Here is the equation for sine, and it has all of the parts and pieces in it, even though we haven't talked about all of them yet. Do this for cosine as well. But the h represents the vertical shift. Okay, h represents the vertical shift. Now, we know a bunch of the other stuff too, though. What does a represent? What does a represent in the equation? We just took a quiz about it.
Area.
The amplitude. What does k help us find?
Period.
The period, right? We have 2 pi divided by k. So that stuff is still in existence. We haven't talked about c yet. But then we have h. Notice it's being added out to the side. A is being multiplied by sine, right? H is being added to. So it could also be in this form. H is still out front, right? Still being added, okay? So vertical shift is something that's being added or subtracted from the rest of the equation. Does that make sense? Doesn't matter if it's in the front or at the end. So I could write y equals 2 sine theta plus 7, or y equals 7 plus 2 sine theta. That's the same thing. The vertical shift is still 7. Everyone good with that? All right. The midline has an equation of y equals h. That just is a horizontal line. And when we graph them, which we're not doing today, we'll graph some stuff tomorrow, you'll see how that's important. And then if h is positive, of course, we're going to shift the whole graph upwards, and if it's negative, we're going to shift it downwards, right? Vertical shifts are not that difficult. All right, so we're not going to graph today. We're just going to talk through how to find things, and then we'll graph tomorrow. And we'll graph again on Wednesday. So it says state the vertical shift and the equation of the midline for the function, and here's the function. I'm going to ask some other questions too, though. What's the amplitude? 2. Right? That we still know that that's not going away. That will be important for our graphing later. What's the period of this function? 2 pi, right? Because k would be what? 1. So you'd have 2 pi divided by 1, which is 2 pi. What is the vertical shift then? Negative 5. That means we're going to shift down 5 units. And then the equation of the midline is y equals negative 5. Y equals whatever h is. We will go back and graph all of that tomorrow. I just want you to be able to identify it today. Can everyone pick out where the vertical shift is? Yes? Any questions? All right. Well, the vertical shift is h, and the midline is y equals h, so yes. Yes. Any questions, though, about finding the vertical shift? All right. Then on the next page, of your note sheet. A horizontal translation or shift is called a phase shift for trig functions. This is a fancy word for shifting it right and left. Phase shift. Just fancy words. Now the phase shift of the function, we have the functions now, is represented by c over k. So the period was 2 pi over k. The phase shift is c over k. C is represented in the function. It's going to be in the parentheses always.
No.
C is always in the parentheses. If it's outside the parentheses and it's being added and subtracted, it's a vertical shift. C has to be in parentheses. Then I have these backwards on your note sheet. I apologize. But if C is greater than 0, you're going to shift to the right. And less than 0, you're going to shift to the left. Okay, now there's one thing we need to talk about. Because C divided by K is not that big of a concept. It's not that hard. But note that there is a minus sign in the original equations. All right? So that's going to change kind of in your mind what the sign of C is. Okay, so when we do our examples, just be thinking about that. So again, today we're not graphing anything. We're just going to find the phase shift. If you're looking at this first example, what's the amplitude? I'm going to talk about these things too so you don't forget all this stuff. 1. And what is the period? What's K? Well, what's K? What's the number in front of theta? 1. So it's 2 pi divided by K. So it's 2 pi. So it's 2 pi divided by 1. Is there a vertical shift? No. So if we're going to find the phase shift, then it's C divided by K. We already know K is 1, right? Now C is indicated right here, but the original equation has a minus sign, and this one has a plus sign. So that means we have minus negative pi. Everyone following me? The original equation has a minus sign in it. So that's going to help us determine the sign for C. So since there's a plus sign, we're going to change it to a minus sign in our brains or on paper, whichever works, so that you know what sign C has. So C in this case is actually negative pi, not positive pi. Everyone with me? So we have negative pi divided by 1. So the phase shift is negative pi. Are you okay with that? All right, we're going to do another example. Again, we're not graphing today, so we'll do that tomorrow. On this next one, what's the amplitude? So amplitude is still 1. What's the period? Pi, because we have 2 pi divided by K, and K is 2. So 2 pi divided by 2 is pi. For the phase shift, because there's not a vertical shift again, we have C over K. We know that K is 2. What is C? Positive pi over 2. Right, because there's a negative in the original equation, so C is just positive. So pi over 2 divided by 2 is pi over 4. If you're struggling with that, then just use your calculator. Just don't use the pi. Just do 1/2 divided by 2, and you get 1/4, and then you put the pi back on top. If you use pi in your calculator, you get these crazy decimals, and it doesn't work. Any questions? Okay.